It's hot.
Yes.
A young teen tries to reunite with his estranged father. A quirky woman and a young teen try to survive each other as roommates. A young teen fights giant mechs against an alien menace. Two teens grapple with the inevitable futility to ward off persistent mindfuckery, torture, and death. You know, a whole lot of fucked up shit goes on in this series, and there's no way around it. Why? Why do you think I decided to do this right after Technolize? Whereas Technolize was one of the most ambitious series tackling socio-philosophical topics I have ever seen, Neon Genesis Evangelion is the series that turns that intense, unforgiving gaze inward and peels every layer of your person back until you're reduced to utter nothingness. Sure, there are wacky sidekicks, giant mech fights, and odd eroticism that you come to expect from an anime, but this show is unbelievably cruel to its main cast. This is where you see what true self-hate looks like, and damn does it give you pause. This series was created in 1995 by Hideki Anno via Gainax, one of the studios responsible for Dot Hack's Eye, Akira, Robot Carnival, and the original run of Fully Cooley. You might know Anno as the writer and co-director of the soon-to-be-released Godzilla Resurgence, was one of the voice cast in Miyazaki's last film The Wind Rises, and was also the writer-director of the infamous follow-up to this series, The End of Evangelion, which will not be covered in this episode, nor any of the other movies. This is just the series. It follows an array of main characters, all connected to each other by the organization NERV, and the seemingly giant robots named Avas, though there are a ton of characters, all of whom are explored in very interesting ways. The main character of the series you can easily pick is Shinji. He's the estranged son of the director of NERV.
Does a bus run through here?
And is thrust into operating an Ava against an alien force known as the Angels. If I said it were reluctantly, that would be an understatement. If you were wondering, yes. This series spends a good deal of time watching children suffer. Alpha Lead ain't got nothing on this shit.
Keep going.
Everyone is dead, Masato. The children are being boiled alive. The fuck, series? Matter with you. Then there's the part where Shinji completely snaps his tether. And those shots are just when things start to get fucked, and that's only exemplified by the editing and cinematography. Yes, it goddamn is. Shush. Its handling verges on genius alone, manipulating time and space second only to Kon. The makers of this series had such a full understanding of film language that all potential of the ideas presented by the story are brought by almost seamlessly. And sure, the animation definitely reeks of mid-1990s anime. Duh. But that's not a bad thing. The 1990s were an amazing decade for animation the world over. We in the US had the birth of Pixar, the reinvigoration of Disney, the tail end of the golden age of Don Bluth, and Japan had Evangelion. That isn't to say this isn't guilty of snafus, such as repeating shots and sequences or holding frames to elongate scenes. Though it doesn't happen often enough to be a real nuisance, it is pretty damn noticeable. And the interesting bit about the course the story takes and the way it's presented on screen is directly related to the backstory of the series itself. Anno created the original concept for Evangelion after succumbing to a long depression, and those who deal with depression, Shinji posits a very interesting question. What's wrong with running away from reality when reality sucks? Though once green-lit for production, Evangelion's main arc was altered drastically from the original concept, from the main protagonist being female, most likely Rei, while the character of Shinji was only originally introduced after the first angel in the opening episode had already been destroyed. By Rei. See how I thought that thought a little while ago? One of the most prominent reasons for the show's changes was the sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system. Anno deemed the original concept to be too close to reality and feared censorship. And due to this, it's been said that Evangelion can be seen as a critique of Aum Shinrikyo, the cult leader responsible for the attack. While hardly keeping ahead of its release schedule, the series' initial script was eventually abandoned in favor of a different narrative. You see, this wasn't originally to be a series focused on dissecting the minds of teenagers to a point where they're broken mind, body, and spirit. It was a story focusing on the last great hurrah of humankind against a race of beings that had nearly wiped them out years prior and had returned to finish the job. Who else thinks that Hajime Hasayama is a big fan of Evangelion? And throughout the whole of this process, the series dives heavy into exploring the facets of psychology, polysocioethics, Confucianism, psychophilosophy, the means of how we as individuals are defined by our own standards, how we're defined by others, and how a sense of self is built from the relations that we have, and without relations and complete loneliness of solitude, we can cease to be people. Or at least it is a question that is continually brought up, along with elements from Kabbalah, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Shinto, Gnosticism, Japanese Oni, the list goes on. The depths the series reaches is fucking ridiculous, and unlike Technolize, in large part, the series is much more easily digested. Oh, don't get me wrong, there are some things that aren't, like really odd choices.
Just no other way. There's always the possibility that an angel might attack while you're away.
Like every instance of that damn penguin. Or like when they introduce something that you never saw coming.
Correct. This is the first human being. This is Adam.
What? Or when the series just goes head and heels right off the rails.
And your perspective within your world is constantly changing.
It changes with the passage of time.
And simultaneously, the performances by the actors are stuff of legend. Not saying that the voice acting is sublime down to the last syllable. Far from it. But every actor, especially the people in the English dub, delivers their lines like they're giving Shakespearean soliloquies.
We will not tolerate failure. Failure. If we fail, it will result in the extinction of the entire human race.
Yea, and verily. And Asuka's whining gets so grating after a while that you want to be the angel breaking her Ava over their knee.
Also too hot and this disgusting suit stuck to my body with sweat. This really sucks.
And fuck, if Shinji was any more depressing, he'd be the lead singer of the Misfits.
I have no talent at all.
I'm awful. Everything is awful. But at least my dad. Oh, life's a bitch and then you die. But to be completely fair, some of the one-liners in this are just darling.
Once this was a living continent of Antarctica. Now it's an ocean of death.
But you know, it is really another kind of fucked up genius of this show. Sure, you can say what you will about the ending that had a lot of fans and critics howling, but you cannot deny the reaction being so strong when the series progresses the way it does. I love stories like this, mainly because I try to create them. A process of experiencing the world along with the character, not in part, as most media, where you have a sense of detachment from the character's view on the world even if you empathize with them, or a detachment of the world in general. Evangelion is relentless with the tortures listed upon these kids, and you're along for the ride. So as the main characters' minds begin to fragment and their spirits begin to snap, you're privy not only to the character's perception of their world utterly failing, but also to their train of thought.
Is anyone listening? Somebody please help me! I'm begging you!
Our mind is what separates our reality from the actual truth. Perception on the truth is completely susceptible to be distorted. Just like when there's a he said, she said argument, there's her side, there's his side, and then there's the truth. And boy howdy do we get to sidestep our way through the very foundations of these kids' understandings of the world they call home. I'd also like to note that this apparently takes place this year. And I know it's an alternative reality and stuff, so shut your pie hole. But this video would go on for a fucking eternity if I were to explore everything about this show. Watch it. It is within the top 5 greatest anime made to date, and it deserves your respect. There. I did it. I did Evangelion. It's done.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Thanks.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Congratulations!
Shut up now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm gonna cut you. Fuck off.